in a voting capacity. So during the executive session, the board received and approved oral and written governing body submission from NYC H&H South Brooklyn Health. The board also received and approved semi-annual governing body report. The semi-annual governing body report, this is a written submission from NYC Health and Hospitals, Kings County. And the board also received and approved semi-annual governing body 2022 performance improvement and evaluation plan written. This was a written submission from NYC Health and Hospital Sydenham Gotham Center. So next on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes for the Board of Directors meeting held on September 28th, 2023. Are there any questions or changes? Hearing none, can I hear a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. So the minutes are approved. So Vendex approval, since we began the process of approving contracts prior to Vendex approvals, there are 4 items on today's agenda requiring Vendex approval. 3 have that approval. There are 3 items from previous board meetings pending Vendex approval. Since we last met, 1 approval was received. We will continue to notify the board as outstanding Vendex approvals are received. So we're going to move now to the resolutions. So I'll start with item number 8 on your agenda, which is approving the application of New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, the system for verification by the American College of Surgeons of NYC Health and Hospitals Lincoln as a level 1 trauma center. So committing to maintaining the high standards needed to provide optimal care of all trauma patients, and that the Multidisciplinary Trauma Performance Improvement Program has the authority to evaluate care across disciplines, identify opportunities for improvement, and implement corrective actions, and authorizing the appropriate offices of the system to execute any and all documents necessary to verify level 1 trauma center designation for Lincoln through the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma. And this is being presented directly to the Board of Directors today.
Good afternoon. I am Dr. Michelle Allen, the System's Chief Medical Officer, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Sheldon Temperman, who's the System's Chief of Trauma Service, who will present the application for Lincoln Hospital to be a level 1 trauma center.
Thank you, Michelle. Dr. Katz, Dr. Pagan, and members of the board, thank you for the privilege of the podium. I'll be brief. So Dr. Pagan, in our warm-up, asked me to brief the board, which is pretty far away. I got it. With where we are in New York City with our trauma centers. So what you see there is a list of the trauma centers that New York City Health and Hospitals owns and runs, spread about the city. So that level 1 trauma centers adult are Kings, Bellevue, Lincoln, My Place Jacoby in the Bronx, and Elmhurst. Harlem is a level 2 trauma center, and we have 2 pediatric trauma centers, Jacoby and Bellevue. And I want to assure the board that the parts of the city that would appear to be not covered are very well covered by voluntary hospitals. And between the voluntary hospitals, and this includes Staten Island, between the voluntary hospitals and Health and Hospitals, we are so well covered that it takes a mere 8 minutes for EMS personnel to get an injured patient to a very well qualified trauma center in New York City. All right, next slide, please. So the reason we're here today is that what I'm showing you, what we're showing you here is the Gray Book. So the Gray Book is the regulatory document that the American College of Surgeons promulgates periodically. This one was just released, based upon this regulatory document, the Optimal Resources Guide, the College of Surgeons comes into a trauma center every 3 years. In this case, it's remote, and it's a very rigorous process, and will verify that all of its very numerous regulations contained inside this book are being met. And the reason why we're here today with the board is that Lincoln Hospital is the first of our trauma centers to undergo review with these new regulations. Next slide, please. So Dr. Allen asked me to go through the process here. So the American College of Surgeons is who creates the regulations, and they are the experts that have decided what is the necessary widgets for trauma centers across America. And around 2011, the New York State Department of Health adopted these regulations and the regulatory framework via the American College of Surgeons to verify our trauma centers. So the phrasing is this: the American College of Surgeons verifies the trauma centers, and then the Department of Health designates the trauma centers. All right, next slide, please. So the reason we're here today, and I really do appreciate the board's time, and I will be brief, is that there was a subtle rule change in this new gray book regarding these board resolutions. And that is, in the previous regulations, we had not noted in the board resolutions the exact level of designation. In other words, level 1 or level 2 in the resolution itself. The gray book now calls for us to call that out. So for Harlem, we now will need to say, and with the board's grace, that we are authorizing Harlem to be a level 1 American College of Surgeons verified trauma center, as opposed to not naming the level of verification. And I have the relevant citation for you highlighted in yellow. Next slide, please. So Dr. Begon asked me to brief the board very, very quickly with what the difference is between a level 1 and a level 2 trauma center. So it's three things. The first two things being education and outreach. So, and injury prevention. So all level 1 trauma centers must have a very robust program for injury prevention, outreach, and also training the next generation of surgeons, emergency medicine doctors, and some specialists to be experts in trauma care. Next slide, please. We skipped one. If we could go back 2, please.
One more.
Okay, great. And then the last component of being a level 1 trauma center is research and scholarly activity. So all of our level 1 trauma centers have a robust research program. You have to produce 10 peer-reviewed papers in a period of 3 years. And you must also create opportunities for the development of future trauma leaders, which H&H is really, really great at. We are becoming a brand name in trauma care with Dr. Katz and Dr. Allen's guidance. Okay, and we can move forward now, almost complete here. One more, please. And I just wanted to let the board know that the American College of Surgeons is very, very serious about performance improvement. I would say about 80% of the regulatory visit is about how good your performance improvement program is. And they're not worried that trauma centers have problems. Trauma centers are very complicated machines with lots of moving parts, and healthcare, as you know better than I, can be messy, and that's okay. But they want us to be very open and analytical about what our problems are and what the solutions that we've created, the corrective fixes, and that the fixes are durable. And so that in this resolution that you're so kind enough to grant us time with today, there is language about the importance of the performance improvement program. Next slide, please. And just very briefly, and we're finished now, Dr. Allen wanted me to share with you some of the highlights of the incredible dense resources that all of our trauma centers have to field in order to take really good care of trauma patients. So you can imagine if you're, God forbid, shot or stabbed, you don't want your surgeon waiting around for an operating room for a case to clear. You want to go right into the operating room and have your bleeding stopped. Ms. Ford is here, one of my wonderful mentors, keeps an eye on me, keeps me out of trouble, and runs an incredible blood bank system for us. Must be very robust in order to run a level 1 or level 2 trauma center. Very deep radiology services, and all of the special clinical engineering equipment and incredible expertise that it takes to keep severely injured patients alive. And I think that that's all we have. Next slide, please. There we go. Dr. Allen.
So we are coming for the board with a request to approve the application for New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, the system for verification of the American College of Surgeons of New York City Health and Hospitals, Lincoln Hospital as a level 1 trauma center, committing to maintain the high standards needed to provide optimal care for all trauma patients, and that the multidisciplinary trauma performance improvement program has the authority to evaluate care across disciplines, identify opportunities for improvement, and implement corrective actions, and authorizing the appropriate offices of the system to execute any and all documents necessary to verify level 1 trauma center designation for Lincoln Hospital through the American College of Surgeons Committee on Trauma.
Thank you so much. Any questions from board members?
Yeah, just so I understand, so the status we're in right now is not trauma 1 at this stage? Current status?
Go ahead, you go ahead.
Hi, Dr. Calamia, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. So we are at, for our 5 trauma centers that are established and verified, they are level 1 trauma centers now. It's just that this rule change was that in the board resolution, we have to say you're authorizing these hospitals to be level 1 centers. We had not put that language in the past, so it's just this subtle rule change that already acknowledges what we're already doing.
Right, and that's my point then. All of these things are in place. It's now a matter of basically the accreditation piece being taken care of.
Yes, sir.
Which requires, I guess, a site visit and all of that, and the application piece, but everything is in place. It's a matter of getting the
Absolutely.
approvals. Okay, thank you.
Just on that point, so that, the reason Lincoln is the only one coming up now is because they're up for recertification at the end of this year, is that?
That is.
So we'll eventually go through all the other trauma centers as well, is that?
Yes, and thank you for that. So, and I meant to add that. So Lincoln is the first to go with the new regulations, this new gray book. And we didn't want to encumber the board, so when we, in the natural cycle, when we come back to you for all the rest of the trauma centers, we will present all of them with the new language at the same time, probably at the discretion of the board, but probably next year at this time.
Great, thank you. And it's helpful to have the description of what's required.
So 5 of our hospitals have trauma centers. Would you say it's the goal of the other 5 to have trauma centers also? And secondly, fiscally, is that something that's possible within health and hospital stringence when it comes to budgeting?
So if we can go back to the first slide with the map. As you can see, we have trauma centers in every borough except for Staten Island. But in addition to that, Cornell, New York Presbyterian, New York City is saturated with trauma centers. So there really is not a need for another trauma center if you're looking from the patient's perspective and the community's perspective. In addition, if you look at all that's required for a trauma center with subspecialties, equipment, staffing, it's a huge financial investment actually to establish. And the difference between the level 1 and the level 2 is your subspecialties that you have on board 24/7 in-house. And I think we're actually thinking for those low volume, high acuity services, even beyond the trauma centers, how do we share our services across the system? So the answer to your question is we are currently not considering adding any trauma centers to health and hospitals, because if you look at the entire city, voluntary as well as our hospitals, we're very well covered across all communities.
Thank you, Doctor.
Anything else? Okay, so let's take it up for a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank you.
for the briefing on trauma centers, which is a topic of interest to the board, of course. Thank you. So I'm going to move now to item number 6, which is an informational item. Fiscal year 2023 annual public hearing responses.
Hi, everyone. Gosh, you are very far away. Hello, I'm Deborah Brown, Senior Vice President for External and Regulatory Affairs. We will move pretty quickly. This is the time of year, you may remember, where we do a summary of the questions, comments, complaints we got at our annual public meeting. And then what we won't necessarily talk about today, but what is available to you and to everyone, to the public, is the response to each of those. And that's really just a matter of saving time and space. So just as a reminder, and you were there, you probably don't need much of a reminder, every year we have an annual public meeting in each of our 5 boroughs. This was the schedule for this past year. I would just point out the dates only to reinforce that all of these meetings and the comments thereof are from a moment in time. And in some cases, you will see that moment in time actually passes. And as you'll recall, you all attend, people from the community come, make their comments, make their complaints, ask their questions. Then we provide responses. My team actually goes by and tracks one by one each of the issues, provides a response in a written form that is posted on our website. And, you know, as a reminder, just today we kind of do the overview. So the sort of rules of the road are in this slide, and many thanks to the board office because the responses are posted in kind of prime real estate on our public website. So, main areas this year, and you'll recall that I usually kind of group them into areas of concern: capital improvement, opioid settlement funds, fair nursing contract, increased communications with communities, and land use projects. And you know, this is not kind of verbatim, but what we do try to do is sort of coalesce the topics into some kind of discernible form. You know, you can probably see, I think, particularly opioid settlements, fair nursing contract, maybe even land use, that, as I said, these are moments in time. You know, we are very pleased that some of those moments pass, some of them continue, and, you know, this work continues to go on. Something that's interesting, if you'll go to the next slide, we broke it down questions by borough. What is, I think, very good news is that each borough's representation and the questions from each is increased from last year. I went back and took a look. And, you know, that's good news. That speaks to the board office, that speaks to my team, that speaks to all of you and the community members getting the word out there. And that's really what we want. And then finally, just as a matter of summary, if you'll go to the last slide, sort of a pictorial, what we tried to do is show the commonalities of the question topics by color, by borough. And it's, again, not quite, a little bit of art, ideally, maybe more than science, but you can see the sort of the main topics of concern. You know, probably not surprising to see the opioid settlement money come up in Staten Island. And these are all of the things that, you know, all of us continue to work on. We provide the responses, and we're always here to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Deb, and thanks to all the staff and your office,
Big effort.
your folks, our office. Everybody worked really hard to make this happen, and of course the board that was board members that were there. That every year we want more participation. So, any questions from board members? Barbara?
I just wanted to know if there was any significant trend if you were looking across a couple of years, a few years.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I went back and pulled up the last couple of years, and not surprisingly, a lot of the big segments in those years had to do with COVID, had to do with access to vaccine. Some public safety was actually one of the big ones last year, which some might argue is related. And then, you know, there's always kind of an interest in being better, reaching out to the community, having these conversations, and there's always an interest in kind of individual projects per borough, per facility. You know, everybody wants their facility to be the best.
I find it very gratifying that 2 of the issues that got a lot of attention were very happily resolved, right? We heard a lot of testimony about a fair nursing contract, and we were able to negotiate a fair nursing contract that everyone feels good about, especially us. We've been very successful now at hiring nurses, so we're very pleased with that. And as well, the Staten Island, we got a lot of testimony about the opioid settlement dollars, and we're able to set up at Vanderbilt a buprenorphine clinic which was directly responsive to the idea that some of the money needed to be spent on Staten Island by health and hospitals. And so that makes me feel good that it shows that I know we weren't able to resolve every issue, and some of these issues are still in play. But it makes me feel good that we listened and we took action where we could.
Bob Nolan?
How are you today?
I'm okay. How are you?
I see there are many questions, of course, from the hearing related to Just Home.
Yep.
I was wondering how you were communicating your answers to that community, which is not really a community.
Yeah.
Just a group of advocates here and there. Were you sending it to the community board? Were you
So,
sending it to the CAB, which meets once a month? Or how were you getting these answers back to those people?
right. So all of the answers, as I said, they're posted on the public website, and that's what we do every year for all groups. We can certainly talk to Chris Mastromano and others about, going to the CAB or other ideas.
So unless they pursue the public website, they're not going to know what happened here.
I mean, I think the goal is that we have this conversation here, and they are on the public website, so we're not trying to shroud anything in mystery.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions on this?
Just following up on that question and answer, I think it does make sense, Deb, somehow to, whether it's to the CABs or however you do it, to get word out. Because I remember us saying, you give us your questions and we're going to get you answers, which feels like a direct response, so it might make sense to post in relevant places where you can find the answers.
Absolutely. And again, certainly it's on the website, but we can also, kind of leverage the CAB structure to try to get that information out too.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So let me move on to item number 7. Authorizing the amendment of the bylaws of New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, the system to combine the Standing Information Technology and Medical and Professional Affairs committees into a single committee to be called the Medical and Professional Affairs and Information Technology Committee, such that all members of the 2 current committees be members of the new Standing Medical and Professional Affairs and Information Technology Committee, and further authorizing the amendment of the bylaws to update the names and status of South Brooklyn Health and North Central Bronx Hospital to reflect the South Brooklyn Health name changed from Coney Island Hospital, and that of North Central Bronx Hospital has been restructured as a second campus of Jacobi Medical Center, such that the bylaws of the system, as amended and restated, shall be as attached to this resolution. And this was presented to the Governance Committee on October 16th, 2023.
And with the chair's permission, I'm just going to stay put to save time. Okay, that's okay. So I'm Andrea Cohen, as you know, General Counsel and SVP, and Jeremy Berman, who did much of the work on this, is out today. So I'm here for both of us. So just to give a little bit of background, and I hope this is quite straightforward, the system bylaws were last amended in October of 2019. These bylaws continue to exist until they are, except for as they are amended over time. Currently, Article 6 of the bylaws, which is the article related to committees, provides that there are a number of standing committees, and it provides that there's a standing IT committee, Information Technology Committee, and a standing Medical and Professional Affairs Committee. Those committees had once been combined as one entity by a different bylaw change. They had been separated really to make sure that there was adequate oversight in the EPIC implementation across our system, which took some time and was a very significant undertaking by the system. The implementation of EPIC is completed. There are constant upgrades and configurations and things like that, but it is very much part of the regular fabric of kind of what we do now. So the main parts of the implementation are over. And then also by way of background, the Article 4 of the current bylaws names our facilities in a way that is with their old names, Coney Island Hospital and North Central Bronx Hospital. So that's the current state. The reason for making amendments on both of those things is, so first of all, with respect to the Medical and Professional Affairs Committee and the IT Committee, it is in order to basically streamline board operations and efficiency. The recommendation or the proposal today is to combine the responsibilities of these two committees into a single standing committee. The current membership of those committees overlaps so that there will not need to be any change in representation. Nobody will be not participating in committee oversight over any of the topics that they previously did. And the new committee will continue to focus on clinical and operational matters also related to IT. And with respect to the bylaw change on the names have been changed on on the hospital's operating certificates. And so these are just conforming amendments to the bylaws. So now what used to be called Coney Island Hospital is known as South Brooklyn Health, and North Central Bronx Hospital is under the operating certificate of Jacobi Medical Center and is a campus of Jacobi Medical Center. So I won't repeat the formal request, but we are seeking to make amendments as the chair described them, to make these two changes to streamline the operation of the board, to reflect sort of changing focus and changing focus of the corporation now that the EPIC implementation is essentially done, and to conform the names of our hospitals and their structure in our bylaws. And with that, I will ask if there's any questions.
Questions? Okay, so let me then take it for a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Both say no. So the resolution is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bylaw changes. So number nine.
Oh, sorry. Resolution authorizing the New York City Health and Hospitals Corporation, the system, to execute contracts with Aaron Security, Inc., doing business DBA Aero Security, Garda World Security Corporation, DBA Garda World Security Services, Mulligan Security LLC, and SLSCO Limited for security services at a not-to-exceed amount of $323,700,000 for a contract term of 1 year and 2 6-month renewal options exercisable at the discretion of the system. This was presented and discussed at the Finance Committee on October 16th, 2023.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. Chris Keeley, Chief Operating Officer in the Office of Ambulatory Care under Dr. Ted Long here. Thanks for having us here today to bring this forward. What we're looking to do here is solve for security for our guests, for our staff at our HERC sites, right? So this is not at our hospitals. What this is for those hotels or those tent locations that you may see in the news where we're caring for the asylum seekers coming into New York City. So we're looking to provide 24/7 security at those locations. We want to keep our guests, our clients, and our staff safe. Currently, the work that's being done here is being done through 2 different contracts. First one is with Aaron or Arrow. That's an existing system level contract. That was the HERC specific. We started accessing that system level contract in March of this year, and the expenditures for that are separate from our system level expenditures. So expenditures with that vendor for the hospitals are shown differently than the expenditures for this program. And then with Mulligan Security is the other existing contract. That was an emergency authorization that started in June of this year. Our historical spend for those two on Aaron/Arrow, we've paid out $28 million through August of 2023, and Mulligan, we have paid out $1.8 million through August of 2023. Both contracts price staff on an hourly basis with limited expenses for additional things such as radios, certain sites that might need a security booth, things along those lines. There's no ancillary costs here, and the RFP was done to competitively bid for these services to identify additional vendors that might be well suited for the work. As you'll see as we go through, we're asking to move forward with 2 incumbents as well as 2 new vendors. Here you'll see that for the 2 new vendors, Garda World and SLSco, we've conducted reference checks to ensure that they can meet the capacity required for this type of work. Importantly here for health and hospitals, all of the work performed under these contracts, all of the expenses under this contract would be reimbursed to health and hospitals under the MOU that we have with the mayor's office for all of this work related to the asylum seeker effort. So under this, the way that we would be managing it with these 4 vendors, the 2 incumbents and the 2 that we're asking to move forward with as well for those 4, there would be no guaranteed work to any of them. We would have sort of operational discretion based on the skill set of those vendors and the different types of layouts of the location. So for example, we have Randall's Island. The needs for a security team might look a little different than at a small hotel, and still that might look different than at a larger hotel where we're housing people. So we'll be able to speak with the different vendors, understand where their skill sets are, and sort of assign the work to them based on that, as well as based on financial competitiveness. All 4 of these contracts will be managed by the HERC program with support from the H&H System Security and Hospital Police Department as well. On the criteria, we're looking at 3 years in business, performing similar services for a multi-hospital system, MWBE status, utilization plan or waiver request, and $5 million in annual revenue for each of the last 3 years. For substantive criteria, you see 30% for relevant experience, and with a note at the bottom there, that was really important for us. We wanted to really look for security vendors who had experience working in homeless shelters, working with immigrant populations, working with asylum seekers. And so, while the minimum criteria said, we want you working in multi-hospital systems, we were really scoring on the substantive criteria based on that relevant experience, working with in these similar types of settings and with these similar types of populations. Other substantive criteria were 25% each for readiness to deploy and cost. So can you move quickly? And how are you from a pricing perspective? And then cultural competency and MWBE. On our evaluation committee, we had operational staff, the program director for the HERC itself, financial staff, as well as the systems, health and hospital systems, chief security officer, and chief of hospital police. Next. So on the overview of procurement, you see here in June, the CRC approved us to publish. A week later, the RFP was published on the city record and sent to 7 vendors. Soon thereafter, we had a pre-proposal conference with 22 vendors attending. Proposals were due 2 weeks later, with 12 proposals received. And on August 10th, the evaluation committee met and submitted final scores with the highest 4 indicated here, the 4 that we're hoping to go forward with: Aaron, Garda World, Mulligan, and SLSco. So for the NTE cost analysis, the projected spend was calculated based on the need for security services at 19 HERC sites. Currently, we have 15. In the coming days, we'll have 16, and maybe more to come. So we needed to put in a little buffer because we don't know exactly what this emergency response is going to bring. So we worked with finance to build in a bit of a buffer for what would it look like to add on 1 or 2 or 3 additional sites, a big site, a small site, a medium site, so that we could sort of blend that out, not knowing exactly what might be coming down the line. The monthly estimates are based on existing staffing models at our HERCs. Each site has staffing models based on the type, facility layout, and safety requirements. As I said, a large tent site might operate different than a hotel, different number of entrances and exits, different numbers of floors in a hotel. You can't look at a large group of people in sort of a tent setting. So different settings require different numbers of staff and different staffing models. The hourly rates for the security staff are largely dictated by local labor law, which sets minimum hourly wages for security staff working for city agencies. And all of this was competitively evaluated as part of the RFP, as I said. The team worked with vendors to negotiate down proposed rates, and that's actually still ongoing. We're about to wrap that up. We're happy with the progress that we've been making so far, and continuing to work with the vendors to push the pricing down further and further before we execute, hopefully in the next week or so. On the vendor diversity here, you'll see the vendor diversity team established a 30% goal on this contract and has had extensive conversations with each of the vendors. You see each of them meet or exceed that goal as proposed with 31%, 35%, 30, and 30. And you'll see in that subcontracted scope of work column, almost all of that's on staffing. There is one vendor who identifies uniform sourcing, and we'll continue working with them to be able to continue to expand that MWBE and working very closely with the procurement team to make sure that they meet and exceed these targets as they're proposed. On the vendor performance history, you see here first on Aaron/Arrow. This is one of the incumbents we're hoping to move forward with. They've been a very high performer, security or satisfactory performance across the board, with one exception that has since been resolved. We discussed this at the Finance Committee meeting, where there were some guards that were leaving their post at the end of their shift before their relief had come. That was leaving a gap in coverage. It was a matter of minutes, but it was a gap in coverage. We were able to effectively work with the vendor to make sure that that was resolved, and we haven't been seeing that issue since. On the next with Mulligan, you'll see satisfactory across the board, so we're happy to report that things have been going well with them. So the Office of Ambulatory Care, we're seeking approval to enter into a contract with Aaron, Garda-World, Mulligan, and SLSco to provide security services at a not-to-exceed amount of $323,700,000, with a contract start date of November 1st, next week, with a term of 1 year with 2 6-month renewal options. As I said earlier on, all the expenses under this will be covered by the HERC MOU with the Mayor's Office. We've been able to adhere to all the terms of the MOU to date. We expect we'll fully be able to going forward, so we fully expect everything to be reimbursed under that MOU. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Sally Hernandez?
I guess I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I read recently that I guess we had to close the site for fire safety reasons and move folks out. And the personnel that we'll be hiring will include, I believe, some folks that do have fire safety experience. So I'm wondering if we can more affirmatively continue to monitor the degree of safety in the facilities so that we're not in a situation where, you know, there's an inspection and we find that there are violations, but that it could be part of this contract, you know, as well.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And importantly, those sites, the site that you saw that got shut down, the HERCs, none of them have been closed for those types of reasons, right? Those were sort of, the one that you saw in the news there, that had to be closed down. That was run by one of our city agency colleagues who sort of came in at a significant moment of need to bring in additional capacity for the city when we were running very, very short on housing options for folks as they were coming in. Over time, the fire department was working with our city agency partner and saying, this is something that needs to be addressed. Unfortunately, the needs in that building were just too significant, right? Certain buildings, you're gonna need to install sprinkler systems or install a fire panel, things along those lines, and that might take months, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't have the time in a moment like that to be able to do that. So what needed to happen there, our city agency partner decanted, helped to move those folks that were staying at that space and move them to other locations. So we work closely with them to help coordinate that, to make sure that it was minimally disruptive to the guests who were staying there. Thankfully, though, none of the HERC sites to date have had any of those types of fire issues that you're describing there.
Right. And I guess at the HERC sites, then you affirmatively check to make sure that you're in compliance.
That's right. We work extremely closely with the fire department. We do have, as you said, fire guards are available under these contracts, both the emergency ones we've been accessing so far with Mulligan and the system-wide one with Arrow, and they'll be available still under these 4 if we're able to move forward. Those fire guards will be very extensively used, we expect, across all of our sites.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Yeah, I feel like I don't know enough about what we look like in terms of the model overall. Just a snapshot. I mean, if we were describing a proposal of the site, who's there, their needs, just briefly, and what are we doing for them clinically and socially?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's sort of, I think about it as sort of, there's, on the health and hospital sides, we do 2 primary types of sites from a physical plant standpoint. One is sort of a hotel model. That's where we have families with children. And so that you may have seen in the news with, you know, the Roosevelt Hotel or the Watson Hotel, things along those lines. And at those locations, they might be anywhere from 200 rooms to 1,000 or even more than 1,000 rooms. So we might have thousands of people living at an individual hotel, families with children, where we're helping the kids get enrolled in school. We're helping make sure that they get their necessary vaccinations so that they can get enrolled in school. We're offering ongoing casework to help them understand sort of what is your, work with them to sort of build out their long-term plan. What is it going to look like when you move out of the city? supported housing, and how can we help you get there? We're increasingly building out resources to help them get connected with temporary protected status, some of the new federal immigration benefits that the Biden administration introduced. We're very aggressively working with folks to say, hey, if you're eligible for this, let's help get you connected to that. And so we offer a wide variety of sort of direct services along those lines, along with things like having the security on staff. We provide 3 meals a day. We'll be coming back in the weeks and months ahead to bring contracts for those types of services. So the food, we do 3 meals a day. It's sort of its own little ecosystem in a lot of ways in terms of what we're building.
Do we have
And then
any
the other
medical-
locations are the tent sites that house adults that offer many of the same services.
Do we have any small, like a little triage medical facility, little group?
Yeah,
there?
we do. So over time, we've learned about a lot of the specific medical needs that people have, asylum seekers coming into our city. One of the things that we've done, which is really important, where I spent my morning this morning, is at our arrival center. So at our arrival center, it's the one front door that all asylum seekers come through, whether they came from a bus from Texas, plane, train, or automobile, you name it. And it's important because one of the first things we do when you enter that door is we have you see our medical teams. We screen for communicable diseases right away for everybody. For active tuberculosis, which is a symptom-based screening that was developed at Bellevue Hospital. We screen for COVID. We actually do a full-body skin exam for varicella or chickenpox, which is not endemic to a lot of countries people are coming from. So they're at high risk for contracting it on the way or here and then transmitting it to others. So we want to make sure that you're well attended to immediately when you step through the door for your safety and for the safety of everyone else. We then have urgent care, which has been really important too, just to touch point you're referring to. And we've seen some just horrific situations of people coming in extremis. We had a 5-year-old that had a witness seizure at our feet. We were able to save his life, brought him to Bellevue Hospital. That saved his life. Started his anti-epileptic again. That had been taken away from him at the border. We saw a woman just 2 weeks ago on more of a heartwarming side that was pregnant and received her first prenatal visit at the arrival center. The remarkable part of that story is that she was 9 months pregnant when she received her first prenatal visit, which can't happen, but it did happen. So here in New York, we do the right thing, and we're really making sure that people are well attended to from the moment they come through. We also do universal screening for depression, the same screen that Mitch and I use in our clinics, with the same protocol that if you screen high enough, you get immediately paired with a social worker at the arrival center to make sure that you're safe and you get the care that you need. We then offer vaccines at the arrival center. This helps kids to get enrolled in school too. We've proudly administered more than 40,000 vaccines, 40,000, just at our humanitarian centers that Chris and I run and our arrival center together. So we do a tremendous amount to help people once they come through our front door in New York City.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Could I follow up?
Question.
Go ahead.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no,
Go ahead. No? All right. 2 questions. One, since a lot of what end up as security issues are often communication issues, and we're dealing with folks arriving with limited English proficiency, what kind of communication skills and language skills are being emphasized in these vendors?
That's a spot-on question. So we first try to work with the security firms to make sure that the best they can, they're hiring staff that are multilingual, right? Across the staff, we want to have folks that speak Spanish, which is the primary language, but we also of our guests. But we also want to have additional staff that speak other languages as well. There's always we have iPads that have video interpretation available to us, just as Dr. Long would say that he uses in his clinic. It's the same platform that we use at our HERCs. Ultimately, what we do is work with each of the security vendors on de-escalation in all scenarios, right? Where what we want to be able to do is lower the temperature. And so try to work through the language barriers if you have them, call in assistance immediately, overcompensate, call in additional help to help with the translation. If you're concerned at all, there might be a translation or interpretation issue, call that assistance in real time. But across our sites, we have dozens of languages at this point. And so you're spot on that is a constant issue that we're sort of working with, training the staff on to make sure that we're being as responsive as possible.
I would just add to that, I'm proud that we use the same language line service that Mitch and I use in our clinics, because as we are seeing asylum seekers from across the world, we are seeing some less common languages and dialects. And My quick anecdote for why I believe in the system we have, which we're using the same system that I do in my practice in the Bronx. In the Bronx, I have one of my patients that I see often who always has this huge smile on her face when she comes through the front door and sees me in my clinic. The reason is she was only two people in New York City she could talk to: her husband, who will come with her, and me because of language line. So, because she speaks a rare dialect, she's immigrated from Africa. So, I'm proud that I'm able to offer excellent care to her every time I see her, and we use that same standard at every one of our sites.
It's wonderful that there's one standard of care. Second question is just my ignorance. How do the wages specified by local labor law compared to a living wage in New York?
That is a good question. I know that my understanding, I'm not an expert on this, so I don't want to overstate it. My understanding is that the prevailing wage requirements in there, they do ratchet up over time, but I'm not familiar with the benchmarks, and I don't want to overstep.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Jackie?
Yes, it's not a question, and it's a comment. First, let me say kudos to your team, Dr. Long.
Thank you.
I am very proud to be a part of H&H, because when I see you being grilled, I want to get through that TV and but you handling it, and I do watch it constantly, when I get a chance. So you are doing, and you need to hear this stuff. You are doing, as far as I'm concerned, H&H proud. And you just keep doing, but it's not by yourself, with the team. And y'all are doing us proud. And so I just need to let you know, and it's not an easy job. It's not easy. So kudos to your team.
Coming from you, Jackie. Well, thank you. We're proud of what we do.
Yeah, this question regarding what actually the security people, this is a very sensitive and very important issue, which is why the issue about wages is so important, because we want quality people and we're subcontracting, whether we're contracting, subcontracting, with people. So what are the typical issues that arise, and what is the, I guess, oversight of exactly how certain things happen? Because as you said, having good training and being able to calm situations down and so on, is that a big issue? What are the big issues? And then how do we find the training and, again, lastly, that oversight of how these things are handled?
Sure. So some of the things that we might see are some of the most common ones are disputes within a family, right? So there's a few different things that you could put in terms of context around that, right? We see disputes between spouses or the parents and the children. Many of the folks are coming from cultures where that may still be the norm. It may not be the norm in the United States anymore, but it may still be the norm in some of the places that they're coming from, and they carry those cultural norms with them, right? And so the security is there to help de-escalate in the moment in that type of scenario, and then the caseworkers, the social workers that Ted mentioned, they're there to come in immediately afterwards and help sort of do the additional education, do the additional support, have those conversations around however things may have been there. What's happening here is if something like this happens, here's what the ACS, here's what the Children's Services process might look like, and how there might be a different process here in New York City than you might be familiar with in your home country, and the risk that might pose to your family. And so we try to do that educational, that sort of orientation side of things. We do that as folks are coming in as well, but it doesn't necessarily resonate in quite the same way as when you're in a moment like that. And so the security is there to immediately de-escalate, and then the social workers on the follow-up. That's a very common instance. We also have the security on site. We talked about the fire guards. There's certain requirements from the fire department where we need to have a certain number of fire guards at a congregate setting for every 100 people that are on site. And so they're there circulating, rotating through to make sure that if there is ever a piece of equipment that starts to blow smoke, they're able to be there in a timely manner to respond to that and help evacuate people from the area. those are some of the primary things that they're doing. Access control actually is another one. So thinking about who's coming on site, who's leaving the site. I mentioned this at the finance committee. We have ID badges just like this for all the staff, all the guests. Everybody that comes and goes needs to have their QR code scanned, so only authorized individuals are coming onto the site. And so we have non-security staff doing that interaction, but if there's ever a point of friction, the security's nearby at that front door to help de-escalate the matter and sort of help ensure that our access control policies are followed.
Let me ask you, when things get to a point, hopefully, and again, that's why I was asking about oversight, and who are up the ladder, because you hate, I mean, the nightmare is escalating to NYPD and having external, people come in. And so do we have a sort of a plan of how we address these things? And
We
is
do.
that a rare event? You hope it's a never event, but I mean, is that hopefully something that's uncommon, or is that something that's an issue?
Yeah, we do try to avoid, we don't want to be engaging NYPD or ACS, as I meant, unnecessarily, right? But there are circumstances where if there's a safety issue for the guest, if there's a safety issue for the staff, call 911. We don't want to put the safety of someone at risk in those scenarios. So if you're in doubt, yes, just call 911. Don't hesitate. But if you're not in immediate harm, if you don't have that immediate concern, then the escalation pathway, absolutely. There is that sort of chain of command from the sort of floor security guard up to the site lead, the site supervisor on the security side. They reach out to their account managers. We have our staff, we have health and hospital staff on site 24/7 managing the sites over top of that security vendor. So they would be engaging our staff in immediate real time. We would be able to respond there as well. And so there's an escalation pathway sort of up the security chain, and then there's also an escalation pathway up our sort of operational managerial chain as well.
Just, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Just lastly, Ted, I know you have a vision for this population for self-sufficiency and well-being. What percent will get there within the next 6 months, if possible?
I love that question. Thank you. Let me start by telling you what percent have already gotten there. So across New York City, we've been able to help more than 130,000 asylum seekers to date, which is an incredible number. More than half of them have already been able, with our help, to leave our city system. More than half, which is incredible. I mean, that's more than 65,000 people that are going to celebrate their birthday in their new apartment this year with their children, or be reunited with friends and family across the country. So, going forward, a really important part of my vision, our vision for this, is case management. What we need to do is we need to know for every household and every part of our system, from DHS, thank you DHS, to our humanitarian centers, what everybody's individual barriers are to being able to take their next step forward, which they want and we want. So we recently are finishing now doing a comprehensive assessment where we're asking the same set of questions to every single household in our entire city system. All 65,000 people will be contributing to this. Where we've achieved a 90% response rate so far, which is, I think, remarkable. So that enables us to know not only, what percent of people across our city system have completed work authorization paperwork, need to have friends and family in Chicago. It's not just statistics. We know where they are and how to talk to them, how to reach them, and how to pair them with a caseworker going forward. So you're soon going to hear more from us in the coming weeks about launching our very large case management program, where we received substantial funding from New York State in order to do. And that's going to enable us to have 2 touch points each month with every household in our system. We're going to base those touch points not just on, we're not just going to have that immediate interaction with them. We're going to base it on the data we have, knowing what their specific barriers are and how we can specifically help them to overcome those barriers. So I'm convinced we're going to succeed here because we already have for more than half the people we've helped. But imagine what we could do if we had knowledge of all their specific barriers and a caseworker with 2 touch points to be able to work through whatever barriers we still have.
So we have a new practice
Yes.
for all of New York.
Thank you.
Cool.
Anything else? No. On this? Okay, so let's take it for a vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, say no. So resolution approved. Thank you so much for all your work.
You're very welcome.
Let me then move on to the President's report, Dr. Katz.
Yes, I wanted to start not on the written, but congratulating Dr. Michelle Morse, who has a really beautiful write-up as power behind the city for the work that she's done to assure that ethnic minorities are not discriminated against in the transplant or other medical settings because of racist policies and procedures that have been passed along in medicine. So I thought that was great, Michelle. Really terrific. We just had a presentation about the security efforts at the humanitarian centers, and Ted and Chris did a lovely job of also talking about the other aspects of it. So I'm not going to go in to depth. Just to remind you, we currently have 15 centers and 22,000 people staying with us. So that's a pretty sizable number. We're not up to the level of DHS yet, but we're a major part of the city solving it. We've registered 55,000 asylum seekers and vaccinated 40,000 of them at our arrival center. I'm sure the board has read a number of articles on all sides of this issue. What I find most gratifying is that nobody questions the care that we're providing, and that's our niche. It's a very complicated issue, immigration in this country. It's very contentious. There are real financial issues. There are real security issues. But our job is to focus on caring for the people who come to us. That's the part that we do. And we've had several stories, especially one by NPR, talking about how well Health and Hospital has done this. We want to promote people getting vaccinations for flu, vaccinations for COVID, vaccinations for RSV. RSV is for children and people over 60. And we're providing all of them at our facilities. The board in its QI had a very heartwarming reception to Woodhall to thank them for their amazing work in both emptying the hospital and then refilling the hospital. Really amazing. 135 patients transferred out in one day, no adverse effects to any of the patients. They all went to other Health and Hospital facilities. We were able to accommodate all of them. The staff went with them. We had great response, and I know this is a contract I debated a long time about the ambulance contract. The vice president was there from 8 in the morning at Woodhall until the last patient left at midnight, supervising it, and several people who were familiar with our previous contract said it never could have happened in one day under our previous agreement, that we just didn't have, as a resource issue, we're just not enough ambulances to have moved 135 patients in one day. Many of the patients, as they left, said, "We'll be back soon, Woodhall, you're our hospital." I mean, it was a horrible thing to have to leave the hospital, no fault of anybody at Woodhall's, purely, the rain and its effect on the capital plan. We have gotten some requests from elected leaders about what would be necessary to mitigate future storm damage to Woodhall, which is very heartening. Obviously, Brooklyn sits on a huge water table. A lot of Brooklyn used to be marsh, and the effect is that this is very easy to get flooding in Brooklyn. And this is surely not the last major storm we're going to have. So trying to figure out, the ideal, the way modern buildings are built is all, including the Ruth Bader Ginsburg Hospital, is you no longer put the equipment in the basement or the first floor. Right? It all goes up. Obviously, that's, hundreds of millions of dollars. We cannot do that for Woodhall. But we're interested in what are the mitigations that we can do. Maybe there are ways to put certain things behind plastic glass barriers to make flooding less likely to cause damage. So we're working on that right now. We were very proud to announce with the mayor and the deputy mayor, Williams Isom, that we are now doing abortion care with telehealth services, which makes it available to many people who may not be able to come, may not feel safe to come to a physical facility in order to get medications. We believe we are the first public entity to do this in the U.S. There was Natalia hosted a phenomenal event on Tuesday, celebrating with the mayor 5,000 nurses trained through the citywide nurse registry residency program. And I know Barbara will be pleased to see how high the retention rates are for the nurses who have gotten the additional training. And I celebrate how often Barbara has said, you know, train nurses, right? If you train nurses, they stay in your system. So that was a very big win for us. We also honored 150 of our nurses as part of the Pathway to Excellence, which I think is also something that Natalia has really pushed for, professionalization, recognizing nurses, having them feel empowered throughout our system. My chart, which has been a great way for our patients to follow their medical care, is now available in 11 different languages: Arabic, Bengali, Chinese, both traditional and simplified, English, French, Haitian, Creole, Korean, Polish, Russian, and Spanish. So I think making sure that our patients can follow their work and their health care is really tremendous. We had a unveiling for the community mural project at South Brooklyn Health, which was really wonderful, and we thank the Lori Tisch Illumination Fund for supporting us. We are continuing to work on having the outposted units, and then what I'm not going to go through in detail is the external and community affairs updates that Deb Brown and her group has put forth, but I will talk about how we got $4.85 million from the Queensborough President Donovan Richards to support infrastructure improvements in Queens. And I was out with Bronx Borough President Vanessa Gibson when she announced $6 million to us for North Central Bronx, Jacoby, Lincoln, and Gotham Health. Elmhurst got $17.5 million from the City Council for critical facility improvements. So people are continuing to recognize the great work that we do. I appreciate the support of our board and happy to answer any questions people have.
Any questions?
Good news.
Yeah, good news. It's a good news month. It's a good news month.
Okay, no questions, so.
Great.
So the committee and subsidiary reports, the committee and subsidiary reports were emailed to you and are in your folders for your review and submission into the record. Are there any questions or comments about the reports? Is there any old or new business to come before this board? Hearing none, the board meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Well done.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.